Welcome to Strategic Alliance Management, and this is the third video of the four-part series. This particular video is all about building assets and solutions with GSIs, and this is study number 303. Let's quickly recap. We spoke about some of the fundamental elements of how product companies and GSIs influence each other in a customer solution map. The more the reds, the more the GSI presence and influence. Similarly, we also talked about what we think and what actually happens in a customer solution. And the third piece that we talked about is the organization structure. You need to map all these three in a very clear and precise manner. So let's go to the real thing that we wanted to discuss. The first question is the why. Why would you build assets with the GSIs? So, what we need to note first is what matters to GSIs really. You see, GSIs have three objectives. First is they want to control a business outcome and offer that as much as possible as a service. Second piece would be to lower risk during the entire transaction. And the third piece would be to utilize and reutilize the human capital that they already have created. So when it comes to controlling an outcome, what they want to do is they want to build an entire solution by implementing the solution as a platform, then incorporate the common processes inside the solution. And the third would be to offer the entire thing as a service with a business outcome. The moment this happens, they gain money through the entire process. And the last piece that matters is that the more they can do it, they can control the total outcome, and that's when the customers absolutely need them. Another piece that I've explained is delivery is where the money is. Now, if they can deliver the entire solution over a long period, like a 5-year contract, that is like real cash flow to them. And just remember, why they want to do this, delivery piece at least, is because they have a very high cost of business development. The moment they can deliver for a long period, the rates can actually be half, and they can still make tons of money out of it. Cool? Okay. Now, in this process, if you're a product and a SaaS company, what matters to you? The answer is, if you're a product or a SaaS company, you need to sell this product along with the GSI asset. And that's the key. Now, why is that? Let's look at the same diagram over here. Over here, if you can sell your product or embed your product or stitch your product or architect your product inside that same asset, you can sell the same product year on year on year, or maybe sell a large platform deal as a multi-year contract, because a GSI is going to combine all of that and offer it as a service. But nevertheless, you can only do that if you build solutions and assets with these GSIs. Now the question is, when should you build assets with these GSIs? Now, if you go back to this fundamental piece that we talked about in our last slide and in the recap slide as well, and in the previous video, this is like a dashboard which explains, if you build assets, where can you position it? Now, positioning is extremely vital because, for example, the nature of the business commands what kind of asset or a solution you need to build. For example, for big data, you can build, you know, a very specific asset, which is more of a single practice play, which means the data practice might be able to take, say, data or a low code asset for data, then stitch those data integration in because you'll need data integration everywhere and offer that as part of the solution. Similarly, if you're doing ERP, which is pretty much now commodity, but the process and the asset becomes complex because of the only way there are so many modules, so much of processes. So what they can say, what the GSIs really want is, what if they could integrate the entire process and make it an accelerated process accelerator? Similarly, in IoT, where you have multiple practices, playing together, let's say in Industry 4.0, the game changes because now you need, for example, you need a multi-practice industry asset. You can have an horizontal asset as well. For example, you can have IoT for oil and gas, or you can have IoT for manufacturing, or you can have IoT for utilities, for example. So, the long story short, what matters is you need to position yourself well and understand what are the practices in the GSIs are playing in the same solution, and then either build horizontal assets or build vertical assets with them. Now, now this is where strategic alliances creates power for the CEO. And this is exactly the reason I always say strategic alliances is all about power, power, and power. Now, if you can build these assets, here are the three advantages. You cover more territory faster because now you're riding with the GSI. Point number two is you win more than your competition just simply because of the fact that you are now covering more ground and faster. And the third piece is this is how you protect your revenue. So, I hope if you're a CEO or a sales VP or a sales rep, you'll kind of understand why strategic alliances with product and GSI companies are extremely, extremely important. So the question is, how do we build assets with the GSIs? I'll be honest with you, it is complex. But what matters is you need to get started. For example, I explained these different plays in the last couple of slides. So understanding what you need to build is extremely, extremely critical. And to do that, you need to know what your position really is, not what you think it is. And this is a big challenge with companies as different people get involved and different mindsets, come into play. So when you build, you need to build a solution with multiple products because as you go, you can see the higher you go, your value is realized faster. And when you build alliances with these product companies below you, you enable the value. Again, as you realize the value, the alignment between these companies is a must. So going back again, you know, when you're focusing with the GSIs, you need to understand what kind of services you are creating for the GSI as well. Alignment without understanding what the GSI business is not the right way. You always have to convert $1 of your product to what services you are directly creating as a market creator, or what is the indirect GSI services you're creating, if you're not a market creator. And then the third is who builds the architecture and the PMO and etc., who delivers it, typically offshore. You you need to keep a relationship with them and even ask how you're contributing revenue to them and who in the different practices are you working with. Then the step 3 is to build that influence map of technical stakeholders and power players. The step number 4 is building the process to create the GSI services. Remember, GSIs are all about process. Customers are all about having people manage their process so they can control outcomes. Most people, most sales reps, don't really look at the process. That is because most sales reps really sell products, and customers need outcomes which happen through their own processes. This is, for example, a map of how to implement AWS going forward. And this process map is exactly what the GSIs use to implement AWS. The last piece is, of course, which is a step number 5, you need to understand that you need to map the services, the architecture, and everything based on these 3 phases, which is what is your landing phase, what's your expansion, and what is your scale, and which piece is being offered as a service. So, asset making is a complex decision, and we can definitely, help you out with that. And it is complex because it's dependent on multiple factors. But the most important piece is if there are no assets, you can see there's no power to the CEO, there's no leverage. And this is exactly the reason assets are the only tangible thing that can be created in the market to create leverage, and thus this leverage creates power. Again, we at Strategic Alliances, we are all about redefining the approach of digital transformation for strategic alliance professionals, sales reps, sales managers, VPs, C-level, etc. for product, consulting, and system integrators. Thank you very much, and we look forward to video number 4.